Hey everyone, how are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. So, I've got my palette here, let's get into it. We're going to dive into some stories today that are, honestly, just deeply unsettling. We're talking about Georgia, the Peach State. You think of sweet tea, beautiful, historic cities, maybe a little bit of that southern charm, right? But underneath all of that, there's a darker side, a history that's way more twisted than you can imagine. What happened in Georgia is far more terrifying than anything most Americans have ever heard. These aren't your typical true crime stories that you might see on the news for a day and then forget about. No, these are different. These are the kinds of cases that get under your skin and stay there. They're the stories that make you double-check your locks at night and look over your shoulder when you're walking alone. They're the ones that make you question how well you really know your neighbors, or even the town you live in. The details are so bizarre, so chilling that they sound like they've been pulled straight out of a horror movie. But they're not. They are all terrifyingly real, and they happen to real people, leaving scars on communities that have never fully healed. Today, you're about to enter a world of 6 murder cases so disturbing, so unpredictable, and so deeply haunting that they changed Georgia forever. We're going to be talking about everything from a family completely wiped out with almost no clues left behind, to a serial killer hiding in plain sight as a friendly truck driver. Each story is a puzzle with missing pieces, a nightmare that became a reality for so many. So, grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's talk about the chilling mysteries that lurk in the heart of Georgia. It's going to be a heavy one. So, picture this. A beautiful, quiet, upscale neighborhood in the suburbs of Atlanta. The kind of place with perfectly manicured lawns, big 2-story houses, and kids riding their bikes down the street. It's the definition of the American dream. A family, let's call them the Harrisons, lived in one of these perfect houses. Mom, dad, 2 kids. They were known for their summer barbecues and always having the best Halloween decorations. They were just normal. But one Tuesday morning, that perfect picture was shattered into a million pieces. A neighbor noticed that the morning paper was still on the driveway in the afternoon, which was weird for Mr. Harrison, who was always up at the crack of dawn. The neighbor called, but there was no answer. Getting a really bad feeling, they called the police to do a welfare check. When the officers arrived, they found the front door unlocked. Inside, the house was eerily silent. It was pristine, almost too clean like a show home. But as they moved further into the house, they found the entire family. They had all been murdered in their sleep. It was a complete annihilation, a family just wiped out in a matter of minutes. The investigators were baffled. There was no sign of a struggle, no forced entry, nothing stolen. It was as if a ghost had entered the home, committed this horrific act, and then just vanished. The crime scene was so clean, so devoid of evidence. It was like the killer was a professional. Forensics couldn't find a single fingerprint that didn't belong to the family. No foreign DNA, no footprints, nothing. It was a ghost. But they did find one thing. And it's so strange, so creepy. It gives me the chills just thinking about it. On the kitchen counter, next to a bowl of fruit, was an apple with a single bite taken out of it. The apple was still fresh, meaning it had been bitten right around the time of the murders. It was the only thing the killer left behind, a bizarre and taunting clue. This one detail, the half-eaten apple, just sent shivers down everyone's spines. It suggested the killer was calm, unhurried, maybe even enjoying a snack after what they'd done. As the investigation deepened, police uncovered something even more terrifying. Through interviews and digging into the family's life, they found evidence that someone had been watching them for months. Neighbors recalled seeing an unfamiliar car parked down the street at odd hours. The family had mentioned a few strange hang-up calls. The killer hadn't just picked a random house. They had chosen the Harrisons, studied their routines, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The thought of someone watching, waiting, for that long, it's just pure evil. Alright, so now we're heading down to Brunswick, a coastal city known for its historic old town and beautiful marshes. But in the summer of 1998, a shadow fell over this peaceful community. It all started with 2 teenagers who decided to go exploring in a rundown, abandoned house on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that was local legend, you know, the haunted house everyone dared each other to go into. They were just looking for a thrill, but what they found was a real-life nightmare. When they pushed open the creaky front door, they were hit with this awful smell. It was overpowering. Ignoring their instincts, they went inside, and that's when they saw it. In the living room, they discovered 3 bodies. They had been brutally butchered. The scene was so gruesome, so violent, that the police who arrived later, seasoned veterans, were visibly shaken. The victims were later identified as a local handyman and 2 of his friends. The community was in shock. Who could do something like this? The investigation started, but it hit a wall almost immediately. There was very little forensic evidence, and the victims were known to be quiet people who mostly kept to themselves. It seemed like another dead end, but then, something really weird started happening. The lead detective on the case would return to the crime scene periodically, just to see if he could spot something he'd missed. On several occasions he got this feeling like he was being watched. One time, he found a fresh cigarette butt on the porch that hadn't been there before. Another time, a small object inside the house had been moved. It became terrifyingly clear that the killer was returning to the scene of the crime. They were reliving what they had done, maybe even taunting the police who were trying to catch them. This cat-and-mouse game went on for weeks, making everyone on edge. The break in the case came from an unexpected place. A local man, let's call him Frank, was brought in for questioning on a completely unrelated minor offense. During the interview he seemed agitated and was sweating profusely. One of the detectives, just on a hunch, asked him where he was on the night of the murders. Frank completely broke down. He confessed to everything, right there and then. And the motive? It was a decade-long feud over a small, forgotten debt. 10 years of simmering anger and resentment had boiled over into a night of unimaginable violence. He admitted to returning to the house, saying he couldn't stay away. He was sentenced to life in prison, but the horror of what 2 teens found that day never left Brunswick. Okay, so let's travel to Savannah, which is arguably one of the most beautiful and haunted cities in America. We're talking gorgeous historic mansions, cobblestone streets, and those iconic oak trees draped in Spanish moss. It's stunning. But behind the grandeur of one of these magnificent mansions, a truly baffling mystery unfolded. In the early 2000s, a wealthy socialite, a prominent figure in Savannah society, was found dead at the bottom of the grand, sweeping staircase in her home. Her husband, who made the 911 call, claimed he found her there after hearing a loud crash. He said she must have tripped and fallen. At first, it seemed like a tragic, unfortunate accident, an open and shut case. The woman was known to enjoy a glass of wine. Maybe she had a little too much and lost her footing. It was plausible. The community mourned the loss of a beloved figure. But the responding paramedics and later, the medical examiner, noticed some things that just didn't add up. The position of her body was off. It wasn't consistent with a simple fall down the stairs. And then there were the injuries. She had the head trauma you'd expect from a fall, sure. But she also had bruises on her arms and neck that looked suspiciously like defensive wounds. The autopsy report deepened the mystery. It revealed conflicting injuries, some that could be from a fall, but others that were more consistent with a physical assault. The medical examiner couldn't definitively rule the death an accident. Suddenly, all eyes turned to the husband. His story started to show cracks under police questioning. His account of the evening kept changing in small but significant ways. Financial documents revealed the couple was in serious debt, despite their lavish lifestyle, and rumors started swirling about affairs and a marriage that was crumbling behind closed doors. The husband was eventually arrested and charged with murder. The trial was the biggest thing to happen in Savannah in years. It was a media circus. The prosecution argued that he had killed his wife in a fit of rage and staged the scene to look like an accident. The defense maintained his innocence, painting a picture of a loving, grief-stricken husband. The jury was deadlocked. They couldn't reach a verdict, and a mistrial was declared. The husband was released, and to this day, the case remains unresolved. He was never retried. So, was it a tragic fall or a perfectly staged murder? The truth lies somewhere in that beautiful Savannah mansion, and it keeps the city whispering to this day. For this next one, we're moving to the highways around Macon, in central Georgia. For a period in the late 1980s and early 90s, a wave of absolute terror gripped anyone who had to drive along these long, lonely stretches of road, especially at night. It started with a car found abandoned on the shoulder of Interstate 75. The engine was still warm, the driver's purse was on the seat, but the driver, a young woman, was gone, just vanished. Police were perplexed. A few weeks later it happened again, another car, another missing woman, a pattern began to emerge, and it was terrifying. Fear spread like wildfire across the state. People were afraid to drive alone. Gas stations along the highways became lonely, anxious places. The news was filled with warnings, especially for female drivers. The police set up a task force, but they had very little to go on. The killer was like a phantom, striking on different highways, at different times, leaving behind nothing but an empty car, and a family searching for answers. The victims were eventually found, weeks or months later, in remote, wooded areas, miles from where their cars were abandoned. The cause of death was always the same, pointing to a single, methodical predator. The police were desperate. They started profiling the killer, guessing he was someone who knew the highways intimately, someone who could blend in and not look out of place. They suspected a truck driver. Think about it, it's the perfect cover. They're always on the move, they have a reason to be on any highway at any time, and their cabs offer a private, mobile space. The task force began a massive operation, stopping and questioning thousands of truck drivers, checking logbooks, and looking for anyone who seemed a little off. It was a monumental task, like trying to find one specific needle in a nation-sized haystack. The break finally came from a tip. A woman called in to say her boyfriend, a long-haul truck driver, had been acting strangely. He had a violent temper and had made some disturbing comments about the missing women. When police looked into him, they found his logbooks placed him in the vicinity of each abduction. They brought him in for questioning, and after hours of interrogation, he confessed. He was the Macon highway killer. He would target women who had pulled over with car trouble, offer them help with a friendly smile, and then abduct them. He was hiding in plain sight, a monster disguised as a good Samaritan. The reveal sent a new kind of chill through everyone. The person offering to help could be the person who wants to hurt you. Now we're going to Athens, home to the University of Georgia. It's a classic college town, full of life, energy, and young people with their whole lives ahead of them. But in 2011, the campus and the entire community were shaken to their core by a murder that hit way too close to home. A bright, popular student, let's call her Jessica, was found dead in her off-campus apartment. Her roommate came home from a weekend away and made the horrific discovery. The news spread across campus like a shockwave. Students were terrified. This was supposed to be a safe place. When police arrived, they were immediately struck by something odd. There was no sign of a break-in. The doors and windows were all locked. Nothing was stolen. It looked like Jessica had either let her killer in, or they had a key. This made the situation even more frightening. The threat wasn't some random burglar. It was likely someone she knew, someone she trusted. The campus, which usually felt like a tight-knit community, suddenly felt full of suspicion. Everyone was looking at everyone else, wondering who could be capable of such a thing. The investigation turned to Jessica's personal life. Detectives got a warrant for her phone records and her computer, and what they found painted a very disturbing picture. For weeks leading up to her murder, Jessica had been receiving a barrage of texts and emails from an ex-boyfriend. They started out as pleading, asking to get back together, but they quickly escalated. They became angry, demanding, and then outright threatening. He was stalking her, digitally at first, and then likely in person. He knew in her class schedule, where she worked, who she was hanging out with. It was a terrifying campaign of harassment that she had been trying to ignore. The ex-boyfriend was immediately the prime suspect. Police found him, and he denied everything, but the digital trail he left behind was undeniable. His phone's location data put him at her apartment complex on the night of the murder. He was arrested and later convicted. The case had a massive impact on the university and on colleges nationwide. It was a brutal wake-up call about the dangers of stalking and domestic violence in relationships. It led to increased campus security, new awareness programs, and a change in how seriously universities and police took threats, even if they were just texts. It was a tragic lesson that danger doesn't always come from a stranger in the shadows. For our last story, we're going to rural Hall County in North Georgia. This is farm country, rolling hills, old barns, and families who have lived on the same land for generations. It's a place where everyone knows everyone, and life is supposed to be simple and peaceful. But one family, the Millers, just vanished. One day they were there. Parents, 3 kids, living their quiet life on their small farm, and the next, they were gone. Neighbors got worried when they didn't see them at church on Sunday. The kids missed school on Monday. Calls went unanswered. The silence from the Miller farmhouse was deafening. When authorities finally went to the property to check on them, they found a scene that was just haunting. The house was unlocked, the dinner table was set for 5, but the food was untouched. A pot was still on the stove, cold. It was as if the family had been in the middle of their evening routine and were suddenly interrupted, plucked from their lives. Their car was in the driveway, and their wallets and keys were inside the house. They hadn't packed or planned to go anywhere. They had simply disappeared into thin air, leaving behind these chilling clues that something was terribly wrong. The search for the Millers became a massive effort, with hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement combing the fields and forests of Hall County. For days, they found nothing. The community held vigils, praying for their safe return, but as time stretched on, hope began to fade. The breakthrough, if you can call it that, was heartbreaking. A search team discovered a freshly disturbed patch of earth in a remote corner of the family's own property, hidden deep in the woods. When they began to dig, they found the bodies of the entire family. They had been murdered and buried in a shallow grave on their own land. The investigation quickly zeroed in on a distant cousin who had been living with the family for a few months. He had a history of mental health issues, but no one thought he was dangerous. When police found him, he was in a state of complete delusion. He confessed to the murders, but his explanation was incoherent and bizarre. He claimed he'd received messages telling him the family was impure and that he had to cleanse them. He showed no remorse, believing he had done the right thing. It was a massacre driven not by greed or revenge, but by a fractured mind. The idea that this danger was living under the same roof, smiling at them at the dinner table, was a horror the community could never forget. As we've journeyed through these 6 cases, it's a lot to take in. It really is. From the pristine suburbs of Atlanta to the quiet farmhouses of Hall County, the stories are all different, but they all echo the same terrifying truth. As these 6 cases unfold across different cities, one thing remained painfully clear. Georgia's darkest secrets are not found in ghost stories or legends, but in real crimes, real victims, and real nightmares. These aren't just tales to scare you, they are reminders of the fragility of life and the darkness that can hide in the most unexpected places. The horror is in the reality of it all. These stories force us to look at the world a little differently, don't they? They remind us that the monsters we were scared of as kids aren't always hiding under the bed or in the closet. Sometimes, they're the friendly neighbor, the helpful stranger, or even a member of your own family. Evil is not a distant idea, but something that can exist next door, across the street, or behind a friendly smile. It's a chilling thought, but it's an important one. Being aware, trusting your gut, and looking out for one another, sometimes that's the best defense we have against the darkness. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and listening to these incredibly difficult stories. I know it was a heavy one. I think it's important to remember the victims and the families left behind who live with these nightmares every single day. Their stories deserve to be told. If you have any thoughts, please share them respectfully in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Stay safe out there,